Welcome Elijah, Catherine, Aisha, Lunga, Bridget, Letty, and Bridget Johnson. Give a warm welcome to our next session.
Right. Good morning, everybody, and thanks so much for the opportunity to share the outcomes of the various projects related to transforming schools or transforming education within schools for sustainable futures. We've got 4 people making presentations. We've got Aisha, who will be sharing some examples from India. We've got Kath and Lunga, who will be sharing experiences from South Africa from 2 different projects. And we've got Elijah from Somaliland, who will be sharing his experiences. I just wanted to provide an overview of how the session is structured. Basically, during the planning process, we came up with this idea of having 3 key areas or 3 key ideas. The one was around place-based learning. The second is around new learning approaches. And the third is on the role of drawing on local and Indigenous knowledge. And so we've got cases from the different countries that will provide evidence or some richness that would describe those 3 main areas. And then we'll take all those ideas, and they all basically converge on this idea of blurring the boundaries between the school and the community. And so with that, I would like to move on to the first of those 3 areas. So the first is that knowledge acquires relevance for a child when it's grounded in the local context, community, and environment, and experienced in and with and through all of these aspects. And I'm going to hand over to Aisha to tell us a little bit more about her experiences from India.
Hi, everyone. Before we start, hi, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Aisha. Thanks.
So before we start, I just want you to do a small exercise. Humor me. I want you to close your eyes just for a few seconds and imagine a forest. Okay, take a deep breath. Look at your mental picture of a forest. Breathe out. Open your eyes and then quickly type in to the chat box what comes to your mind. I'll wait for a few seconds. Yeah, just a few words will do. Nice. I can see some responses, and while you put it there, and we'll come back to this later. So what I wanted to, do with this exercise is see what, as a group of educators from around the world, we think of forests, or we could say about nature. How do we relate to them? And actually, I want to look at this vis-a-vis what children living near forests or living in forests in central India, how do they see the forest? How do they relate to it? I'm sweating profusely, actually, some nervousness, but also the humidity in Mumbai. But before that, before we look at children's pictures of the forest, I would like to give you a brief backdrop of who these children are and the place that they come from. So these are in the picture, the slide you see. This is a place in central India, and we worked in 4 villages there. And these children are Gond or Korku, These are from indigenous communities or Adivasis, the preferred term in India. And the green part here in the second picture, that's the Satpura forest, the Satpura Forest Reserve that has become the Tiger Reserve now. And these communities have been constantly pushed from inside the forest to its fringes. So they now live in the buffer zone or the edges of the forest, and they push to the highways. It's almost like literally being, the attempt is to take this land and then mainstream the people. So that is the backdrop of the community. And when these children come to schools, instead of finding ways to deal with the social inequities that, Adivasis are historically among the most marginal communities, and in many ways. So you would think that when they come to school, they'd find ways to deal with this and come out of it. But what happens is, unfortunately, that they're seen from a deficit perspective, that they are poor not just in terms of economics, socioeconomic indicators, but also they're seen as poor in terms of the knowledge, experiences, and what all it takes to do well in school. I recall my very first conversation with a teacher in this region, and we were talking about the difficulties children have, and particularly in science, that I teach. So I asked her what do children find difficult, and then she flipped through the textbook, and she said that biodiversity, that's a difficult chapter. Children haven't seen hydra and dolphins and things mentioned there. So, and that's a classic example of focusing of what children do not have or what they do not know, when there's a whole lot that they do know about forests, about biodiversity. And so, in this study, what we did is focus on this, the rich experiences that children have from their own work, from the cultural knowledge that they get from the communities, the experiences, who they are, their identities. So we wanted to explore that and see if we can bring it into the classroom. And from this knowledge perspective, these diverse forms of knowledge, discourses, identities, rooted in students' lives are valuable resources for learning. So one of the strands that we explored was how does this community, living in, and their lives are so tied with forests, how do they see forests and how do they relate with it? And in this context, we asked students to draw a picture of the forest. And next slide, please. Here you'll see on the left of the side of the screen some pictures that children drew. So you can see that children drew wild animals, birds, trees. I'm sorry, they are just down here, but you'll see hills, water bodies, everything. It's brimming with life, but not just wildlife, but if you see carefully, you'll see domestic animals also grazing there, along with wild animals. And there are humans there doing their work, grazing cattle, or there is just a hint of human presence with a basket there among mahua flowers. So, and if you see the pictures on the right, I could just put in a few. Those are pictures of the village, okay, their village. So when they drew the picture of the village, there is a forest in it. There, so hills, rivers, the forest, the shrine which is actually in the forest is part of the picture of the village. So they flow into each other, the forest and the place where they stay. It's just one. It's not different things. And this actually breaks the binary, the way we see at nature, the human and nature. We see them separately, and we don't see that in children's drawings. And the way they talk, so we took this ahead by talking about what if why our forests are changing, what if there are no forests, how would it affect all these different people and non-humans connected to the forest. And that was amazing. It has, biodiversity, there was like a very, very rich, intimate knowledge of local biodiversity, the interconnectedness, the key idea, in ecology. we got a lot of glimpses of that. And I'll come back to this, that the implications of this idea, of this picture of the forest, it has to conserving forests, conserving nature. I'll come back to this later, but for now, I hand over to Catherine. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Aisha. Hi, everybody. So I'm going to break two of the presentation guidelines. I'm going to stay seated and I will be reading a little story. I have written a little case study of our little school in a kind of philosophical prose. So you can close your eyes or you can keep them open and yeah, try to stay with me. When I was at school as a child, I used to sometimes stand and stare over our boundary fence into the wide open empty streets of the neighborhood, wondering two things. What am I doing here? And where is everybody? Where are all the grandparents? Where are all our parents? Where are all the other children? The separation of it all and the isolation shocked me. It felt unnatural. Fast forward several years, and I find myself in the life story of a beautiful initiative called Starseed Community School, which is striving not so much to be a school, but instead an ecosystem of learning. It was born out of the community of Muizenberg, a seaside suburb in the city of Cape Town, started by parents and teachers who wanted a local, nature-based, holistic education for their children, learning embedded in real life. 8 years on and 85 children strong, we are still run by parents and teachers. We keep our classes to 15 children max for the sole purpose of being able to walk with them wherever the learning leads. We have no school grounds. Renting a residential house, the flay or wetland, a public open space at the bottom of the street, is our playground and assembly hall. Our day begins there at sunrise in a circle of song, and ends there too, whether rain or shine. Through that daily practice, we grow a place of belonging for all of us, no matter where we come from, a common ground carved by our presence. We delight in the herons, flamingos, and pied kingfishers in the water just meters away. We notice them and learn their names. There is a tree in the middle of the field there, and I would say that this is the heart of the school. Not a day goes by without it being climbed or sat under for shade. It has held school meetings, plays, monthly flay days, and festivals. Shaped by the prevailing southeaster wind, it in turn shapes us. The beach at the other end of the road is our living lab, the rock pools and ocean our teacher. We make use of the municipal swimming pools and library. The librarian opens early every week, especially for our class 3s. She delights in their visits and has asked for the artwork from the children to stick up on the library walls. We have no need to buy our own books. The library is there to share. We learn about the soil, how to grow food and care for the earth in the community garden. We learn from the many artisans in our streets, the potter, the blacksmith, the weaver, the architect, the artist, the sculptor, the musician, the baker. They welcome us, happy to impart their knowledge, skills, and wisdom. Each encounter builds bonds, relationships, inspires, brings meaning and appreciation, along with inquisitive questions. In each step, we are all learning together. We are all growing into the best versions of ourselves, reflected in each other. Teacher, parent, child, neighbor. We walk the streets, we greet, we sing, we giggle. The children claim their space as community members out in the open, in the sunlight, and we warm the hearts of those we meet. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that wonderful piece of prose. I think that much of what we have seen in the first session, both from Aisha and from Catherine, talks so much to the second big idea, which is around practical learning, providing opportunities to make abstract concepts seem more real, or to come to life in the mind, body, and soul of a child, and to look at different ways of learning, for example, collective learning that takes the pressure away from the individual and allows people to, children to learn together. And to start this, we have a short video, which I'm going to share with you. This is a video that comes from KwaZulu-Natal, and it draws on some of the experiences from the TESF project there, but I think it relates more widely to as well.
We need to transform education. We are stuck. We are stuck in a one-dimensional education which doesn't involve systematic problem solving and thinking outside of the box. We need to use our strengths as Africans in arts, music, dance, and use that to empower the children. There's clear evidence in literature and amongst educators that children learn through music and song. You're passively learning. You don't know that you're learning, but it's going on. It's almost happening subconsciously. You learn better when you're not under stress and you're not under pressure.
When we started this research, we were realizing that the kids in the choirs were learning critical soft skills that we thought to bring those into the agricultural practice as well. We've introduced this technology called the Tower Gardens into the schools, which is an innovation dealing with water scarcity issues. Action learning through activities such as gardening provide opportunities for abstract concepts that are taught at school to be embedded in the mind through understanding how these activities operate in practice. In this process where the kids are engaged in co-learning and loving their gardening, we hope that these attitudes will spill over to the community for better futures.
No.
Thank you. Sorry. I would like to now hand over to Lunga, who you would have met in the video, and he's now going to tell us a little bit more about how we've looked at different ways of learning within the project in KwaZulu-Natal. Thanks, Lunga.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry. As Bridget has said, my name is Lunga, and I'll be sharing with you this idea of collective learning. And in my mind, collective learning, I didn't expect to see it come out during our work. and we were busy trying to teach kids about tower gardens, and we were very expectant of how they were going to learn this and reflect on it. And as the project went on, we realized that a very interesting phenomenon happening within the kids, where quite a bit was happening amongst the kids socially in a space and as a group that was really fascinating to us, and we really wanted to zoom in on it. And collective learning, I found a very simple sort of explanation of what it is. It's described as a dynamic and collective process that results in the production of knowledge. Such knowledge is institutionalized in the form of structures, rules, routines, and norms, discourse, and strategies that guide future action. And when we were talking to the children and having them reflect on a various number of things in school, out of school, and during the process of learning what they were learning, we then went back to them and started asking them questions of what they were doing. And we then could find that there was quite a bit of sharing of ideas and sharing of skills, and also the sharing of resources that we were hearing kids talking about, whether it was them going to water the garden, or it was them just reminding each other. But as a group, as they were remembering and reflecting on the experience of doing this, we realized that they were busy talking a lot about their experience and what they were actually doing during this time. And we also had quite a bit of stories that kids were telling, but these stories had a lot to do with how they were seeing what they were doing, and also what they'd learned. And sometimes you'd find a child would be able to remember C, and then the other one will be able to remember J, and then the other one is able to say, well, we started at A. And as a group, you could see this the formation of ideas and the formation of one big thing coming together, not because one child had a lot of knowledge, but you could see that not one of them had everything, but as a group they were seeing this. And then we realized, hey, hang on, it's not that we can see stars in this, but we can actually see the whole collective. And as the project progressed, we realized that the kids were also learning. And sorry, the screen is gone here. Okay, yeah. And so as they started talking to us and doing other parts, which is putting together their songs, and also how we learned, we taught them how to do gardening. We could see that gestures were celebrated that helped. These were group gestures, either putting up your finger in order to be able to make spaces, or to run around, or to do the hammering, or all of these things were part of the collective. And then these were all the gestures that helped people to be able to really anchor their learning in terms of what they'd been learning. And we could see it also in other stories that were coming out as well. And then when we got to the song creation, because what we did was we got the kids to form a song using what they've learned, and we could see the kids just going out and then bringing back together a very nice a solidified thing that was coming. But as the kids were just doing all of these things, we could see that every time it was always a collective thing. It was not a person in front doing all the the thinking and leading everybody. And this was really a beautiful thing for us to see. And I did a little bit of reading around collective and collaborative learning. And then it's a fascinating thing, and it's actually quite something that is developing in the scientific community, how to be able to even assess these things. And talking about assessment, this is actually something that makes me wonder, because as we've spoken about this in different meetings throughout the network, and also here in South Africa in the hub, this question of well, it's a lovely idea. However, how do you assess for collaborative or collective learning? And this is a big question that I thought I'd be able to ask the whole group here to give a little bit of their thoughts, reflection, or anything, and really to just say, well, what do you think? How do you feel about this whole thing of collective learning or collaborative learning? Is it something, or are we just looking at something that is never really gonna materialize, or something that is got too many problems, especially in the traditional education system? So I don't know if we have a little bit of time here, Bridget, to be able to do that, but I just wanted people to just give us a little bit of their feedback in terms of what they think, and we can just see. I'll
Thanks.
be very happy to see what you think.
Okay, thanks, Lunga. We're running a little bit behind time. So what I'm going to ask is that people please put your responses. So the response really is to the question of how do we assess collective learning processes effectively? And can we do that within the context of the schools within which we are working? And if you can put that into the chat, that would be great. And we'll pick up on those a little bit later. So thanks very much, Lunga. I'm now going to hand over to Catherine to tell us a little bit more of her experiences from Muizenberg.
Thanks.
My apologies.
So this is a day in the life. Today, after the morning singing circle, all the classes start with movement on the flair, catching the beanbags, dancing their times tables, skipping and hopping in time with songs. They are building memory through rhythm. Today, class 1 are learning the letter B. They are hearing a story about a blue butterfly. Their teacher has drawn it beautifully on the board with chalk. It's colorful and alive. The children can't wait to draw their own in their books. Tomorrow, they will find the B shape in its wings. But tonight, they must first take these images into their sleep. Learning needs time to digest and deepen. Not more, not faster, less and slower, to digest and deepen. Today, the class 2s have gardening in the community garden. Before we head off, we grab our 2 compost buckets from the school kitchens, and the children take turns carrying them. We enter the garden and they head to the metal compost drums where they empty them. Beside the drums is a pile of compost 3 months old. Today we will dig new beds and shovel that compost into wheelbarrows and onto the beds. The children are a part of the cycle, from apple core to compost to planting new seedlings to harvest. Today, the class 3s visited the blacksmith. They got to hammer glowing metal, heated in fire, and bend it with their own strength to make a spiral. They experienced the real magic of the elements. They were nervous to handle the tools and of the heat, but we trusted they were capable. With guidance, they did it, and this gave them so much confidence. Their eyes lit up. Something stirred inside their souls as they started to imagine the possibilities. Today was a beautiful summer's day. Our local beach co-op NGO was having their monthly new moon cleanup. We often join, so the class 4s went off to the beach each child barefoot immersed in rock pools. They find with delight starfish, anemones, octopus, little fish, urchins of every color. We pick up litter and witness firsthand the effects of it landing in the ocean. One of the anemones has started to ingest a plastic popsicle wrapper. We start to pull it out slowly. The children are concerned about all this plastic, and we have amazing conversations with some of the others there, homeschoolers, elders, and marine biologists, about which creatures are what and the importance of taking care of nature. Thanks.
Thanks so much. I think it's so rich, the learnings that are coming. And that takes us to the third big idea, which is around recognizing and integrating local and indigenous knowledge into learning spaces, because it helps to reimagine the teaching and learning processes. And I'm going to move on to Aisha, who's going to share with us their experiences in relation to this. Thanks.
Thank you. I will try to shorten this. So I looked over the responses that the people put into the chat box, and I see that it is a quick look. But as a group of educators working towards transformative education, I think we have that picture of forests not just as pristine greenery, devoid of any social human aspects to it. So people imagined smells and the cool breeze, experience of sunlight filtering in, and such embodied experiences. So let's look at what young and adult Adivasi members of the Adivasi communities we talked to in our study, how they relate to forests, and what can that tell us about how can we conserve forests. So as we talked to them, we understood that they have a very deep spiritual, cultural, and philosophical relationship with it. It is not just like you go into nature and then you feel nice. It's not just that. So, like for example, every Gond community, that is the community living in these villages, has in the surname the name of a creature, an animal or a plant, and they think like that creature is will never harm them, and they have to protect each other. They will respect each other. So that connection is there, and every family has such connection with some components in nature. And while they have a very critical dependence on forests for subsistence, they also practice a lot of restraint. So there are festivals when they go to the forest to collect medicinal herbs that they would be using for lack of infrastructure, health infrastructure for one, and knowing the kind of things about the forest to heal themselves. But then it's there is a lot of restraint in using it. So this festival is celebrated once, and they gather the herbs only once in the year, and so it's not an indiscriminate kind of usage. And whoever goes to collect these herbs, when they bring it back, it is for the community. It is not for themselves, those who put in the labor. It is for everybody. It's a shared space. And so there is this idea of the forest as a commons. It's not there for us to use. It's like everybody's, and not just humans. It is for all the creatures, for all the living beings and non-living beings. So here in one of the pictures, you see that a tree, and there's a bottle and things hanging from there. It had a beautiful, it's actually a wind chime, and it's there in this farm near, just bordering the forest. It is to prevent the wild boars from coming and destroying the farms. So it is, it's such it was pleasant, and then it was not disruptive to the forest. It was not harming the wild boars. So that is a kind of mutual relationship of respect, of care that I see. And on the set of pictures on your on the right of the screen, you'll see this is the mahua flower, and picking mahua and making things out of it is a very significant economic activity for the community here. And being such an important economic thing, I mean, I should reduce it to an economic thing. But what I was thinking was like, it's the first of all, you don't pluck the mahua flowers. When they fall, you pick them up, and many of the children also do this work. So, but what happens is, I was wondering, like, it's just there. Like, imagine a tree with money on it, and people would hoard it. But so these trees are in the forest out there. So how do they share this? That was the question we were exploring, and it was really very interesting that they have different kind of an economic and justice system there. So it's like people don't hoard trees, like indiscriminate kind of trees. And so those are the set of practices. I can't go into a detail, but yeah, we can go to the next slide. And but from whatever I said till now, we see that people they don't see nature as devoid of humans. So that nature and his human binary is not there, but it's very much there in the state's approach to nature or forest, and it's there. It's reflected in the state textbooks that children use, and it does. This textbooks it just doesn't support the state's conservation projects that actually removes things of removing. It's a fortress kind of conservation model where people have to be removed from their place to protect that place. So it does that. It supports this kind of a model, but on top of it, it also blames people living near forests for destroying and for the loss of forests. But if you talk to people, they have a mutual kind of a relationship. There will be deviants always, but then as a group, it's not a one-way relationship of use. And the textbook don't mention anything about who are the other players who take away things from the forest and in a large scale. And it also doesn't mention anything about the havoc this kind of a conservation effort of displacing people it has in people. So when we talk to people, they narrated stories of the history of displacement, loss, but also about the resourcefulness with which they turned the barren lands into arable lands wherever they were moved next, and they were in solidarity with each other. So there was this collective struggle against the injustice of displacing them. And one of the very I couldn't say famous, but then one of a very important example is this of the Tawa Matsya. It's the fishermen's union, and it fought for the fishing rights in the waters which filled their land. So they were removed, and there was a dam there, and their land got submerged. So they fought, and then for 10 years they were doing fishing there. And they were using indigenous techniques and the value systems. What happened is, actually, the fish population there flourished. So people's livelihoods don't have to be, against conservation. So if we bring the local and indigenous
I need to wrap up. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So I just like to say that it's not necessary that there has to be this binary. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Aisha. I'm going to hand over to Lunga to share some of his experiences. Thank you.
Yes, hello again, everyone. So one of the questions that we had to ask of the learners was, what do you know, and how do you learn it, and what kind of behavioral evidence of what you've learned can we see? And as we did, we realized that agriculture as a whole was something, I mean, you can see it in the community as you go in, but somehow when we get into the school, we do not think of agriculture as something that is already in and around the children's consciousness. And we realized that as we were talking to the kids and asking them this question, that there was quite a bit that was observed at home, doing their home gardens, and then also in the community. Either the kids were participants in that, or they were observers. But one way or the other, there is this rich knowledge that is coming, that the kids bring to the school, into this agricultural activity, that they are able to reflect on. And some of these things were spiritual elements to it. One of the kids said to us, "Hey, our grandmother used to tell us that you must be of a cheerful spirit when you're going into the garden, because you've got a connection with your plants, and then if you are angry or if you're upset, the plants will catch that." I mean, obviously this is something to really prepare one to be able to really go into these things, but there's a lot of spiritual element to that as well that we got. And some of the things had to do with values. And we asked the kids, why are you going into the garden? What motivates you to go into the garden? And I said, well, our parents told us to never disappoint our visitors, and we go into the garden because we wanted to see what we've done, and we need to learn. And this we saw that it actually built diligence on the kids, and this sense of reciprocation, and making sure that their gratitude was very obvious to us. And some of the values that came out of this as well had to do with honesty, where in the midst of the group, and you feel that everybody has been not doing what they're supposed to do, and then this young boy comes out and he says, well, you know what, I think it's time for us all to be very honest. Looks at the teachers, looks at his peers, and then says, we haven't done what we are supposed to do. And what we need to do now is to really try and go back to this, so that when our visitors come here, we've got something. And we really saw that this was not something that it was just for him because maybe he's a future leader or anything, but it was something that was really grounded, coming out from where he was coming from at home and in his communities. This is a practice, and we really appreciated these kind of things. And yeah, so I think this is where I think community can also play quite a crucial place in the education and in our schools. And we really need to find ways of connecting these two, and making sure that it's a both way, not only just the education system giving to the communities, but also communities giving to the education system. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I want to make sure that we provide enough time for Elijah to share his experiences from Somaliland. So over to you, Elijah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Bridget, and hi, everyone. Can you hear me very well?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Great. Sorry, there is a cock in the neighborhood that is making some noise. I had not anticipated that, but it might come in at a certain point. Yes, I'm just going to probably re-emphasize what some of my colleagues have earlier said. And I will start with this quote, that knowledge and practice are twins. There's no practice without knowledge, and there's no knowledge without practice. That kind of summarizes everything that I'm going to say. We are implementing a model eco school project in Somaliland, probably one of its own, the first of its kind. We are not an education institution, but we are a non-government organization, but work closely with one of the schools in the communities to implement this project. What we found out about knowledge, about traditional and indigenous knowledge, is that it's knowledge, it's technology, and it's practice that communities have used to solve problems within their communities for over time. And this is being passed on from generation to generation through poems, through some writing, through songs, and stories. can you please go to the next slide? And as we proceed to the next slide, we've also found that through our project, we've also found that traditional knowledge, traditional and indigenous knowledge is not static, and there's different understanding of what it is, and also conceptualization of the two. Incorporating traditional, and we were through our different interventions, through our different activities, we found that incorporating traditional and indigenous knowledge into school learning facilitates understanding, students' understanding of the different concepts that are being discussed. And almost all my colleagues have hinted on this, because it's traditional and indigenous knowledge is hands-on, eyes-on, and students can easily understand what is being talked about. But it also enhances the learning experience of the students. Through our project, we brought in different traditional and indigenous knowledge bearers to share their knowledge with the students, share their knowledge on agriculture, share their knowledge on agriculture, on environment, on menstrual hygiene management, and other different topics. And we found that through the sharing exercises, the students could easily understand what is being talked about, and they could easily appreciate whatever was being discussed or whatever was being talked about. Vis-a-vis, when we talked with the teachers of the students, they also reported that the integration of traditional and indigenous knowledge into the school, into the learning process, kind of enhanced the students' confidence. Students would easily open up, ask questions when they were having the local and indigenous knowledge sharing exercises. That's where students could easily open up, they got confident, easily talk about certain aspects within their communities, which was not the case when they were into their formal classes. Another thing that we realized that integrating the local and indigenous knowledge into the school learning spaces enhanced community cohesion. When we brought in the local indigenous bearers, who are seen as marginalized, not so much educated, but with lots of indigenous knowledge, the connection between these two enhanced cohesion. And bringing the traditional and local knowledge bearers into new learning spaces further improved the cohesion between the schools and the communities in which the schools are. However, we had some limitations that I would love to point out here. One of them is that traditional and indigenous knowledge is sometimes considered backward and inferior. And this is something that we saw at the beginning of the project. This is something that we saw with the students. They were kind of, this is so traditional, it's not for us, it's not. So there was that limitation. And the other limitation is that traditional and local knowledge is often not written. Not so many people have written it. Well, that's what we found. Probably someone can have a different view about that. But it's something that people own, people have, and they die with it. When someone dies, they go with it. The other limitation that we found was that some of the beliefs and practices are not tolerable to some people in the new era. So they think this is, it also goes back to what I've earlier said, that it's considered backward and inferior. So people are not willing to take it up easily. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. That brings us to the last minute of our session. And I'm sorry, Elijah, that I had to rush you through that bit. I think just in finishing, it's very clear that all these aspects that we've heard about today, they all talk about how the relationship between the school and the community, not just the people, but the context, really needs to be strengthened and taken into account. We unfortunately don't have a chance for a discussion now, but please make sure that your comments are in the chat. And I've put my email address there. I'm happy to forward any comments to our speakers if you just make it quite clear who you're directing your comment or your question to. And I wanted to thank everybody, and my apologies that we didn't have more chance for interaction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bridget, for that.
Rosie, we can't hear you for some reason, but you aren't muted. No. Shame.
Thanks, Bridget.
Shame.
Well done.
Ooh, thank you. Sorry, it's not so easy to keep everybody to time. Thanks.
Yeah.